exception is basically you have to put it into a try catch block. So here if you see you have a try and the same error will come because no fields are initialized, but since you are catching the DML exception, it will be gracefully handled. Okay, so even if an error occurs, it will not throw on the screen, but will capture it in the debug log. So you have to always write it in a try catch block. Now now one question interview may ask you. See, you said catch DML exception. Where did this come? This come from the blue sky. What is this DML exception? So at that time you should tell that this is a built-in exception. Apex provides built-in exceptions like DML exception when you insert an S object without values. Query exception, suppose your query fails with invalid syntax. Null pointer is suppose you try to access a null object. Arithmetic is a arithmetic operation error. Type exception, invalid type conversion. S object exception, when you try to retrieve a value of a query or a field value which is not part of the query. Now, on top of this, if you don't know what is the exception that you're going to handle and you want to handle a general exception, Salesforce gives you an exception class. So there are some more like list exceptions. So I would tell you, like, you should at least be able to list out 4 or 5 of this. If not, you please go and read the Apex developer guide. You don't need to buy hard this, but at least you should know some of the built-in exceptions, because at least the DML query and S object and null pointer you should know. Okay. So exception is for generic exception handling. So now interview may ask you, can I mix, suppose I just want to use 2 built-in exceptions and I want to have a general exception. But what will happen in that case? Because if, so the answer is yes, you can mix general exception with query exception. So the next trick question the interview may ask you, now since I have a query exception and exception, which will run if a query exception occurs? Obviously the answer will be first query exception will run. Now another trick question he will say, suppose I don't keep query exception at all, what will happen? Then in that case it will be handled by the generic exception class. If you don't give any of the custom built-in exception, they will still be handled, but it will be handled in the exception class. So you have to answer intelligently the questions. Okay, understand what the person is asking and answer it intelligently. Now the next thing that you got to do is one more question is, can I put the exception class at the top and then I can put the built-in exception? No, exception class always has to be the last in the order of exception, otherwise it will give an error. Okay, so remember these answers. And next question is, can you create a custom exception? Yes, of course. Apex allows you to raise a custom exception, but there are 2 rules. One is you have to extend the exception class, and then you have to give your class name of that exception class should have suffix of exception. So you have 2 things. One is you extend the exception class, and then the class name should have a suffix of exception. Okay, after that you can write anything that you want inside. So here I have given a constructor and it just writes it to the log. Now you can use any custom logic and throw this exception from any other class. So here if you see here, so you are saying you throw new exception handler exception with the message, and this is handled over here. When you say throw new exception handler exception, this exception will be thrown. Your custom exception will be